Welcome, everyone, to Monday Match Analysis. I'm Gill Gross for a very special preview show, one that only comes every 4 years. 2024 Paris Olympic Games are here, and as always, I will be going quarter by quarter to break down dark horses, upset alerts, popcorn matchups, quarterfinal predictions, final weekend predictions. I'm excited to watch tennis at Roland Garros again, this time in the best of 3 set format with the pageantry and the extra kind of stuff that the Olympics brings. I'm also excited to watch other sports in Paris. I particularly love the chance to watch some of the other racket sports. I have a particular affinity and an appreciation for other racket sports, I think, because of my tennis background. So I love watching badminton during the Olympics. I love watching table tennis during the Olympics. Volleyball as well is maybe also an ancestor, not a racket sport, but you are hitting a ball back and forth with a net in between. I prefer gym volleyball to beach volleyball, personally. But I digress. Let's talk about the tennis. And I do have some stuff to go over in the intro. First of all, I'm coming off of a really good channel double, successful channel double when it comes to predictions, despite what some of the haters may say in the comment section. And I'm someone who's very open about sometimes being way off on my predictions. Sometimes my predictions can be a mess like anybody else. But I will defend my record in this case. I will defend my record quickly. Roland Garros pre-tournament got 6 out of 8 quarterfinals correct, got 3 out of 4 semifinalists, and got 1 of the 2 finalists. Didn't get the champion. Now, mid-tournament, I got all 3 of the quarterfinal predictions correct, and I got my pre-final prediction correct. Alcaraz over Zverev. Wimbledon, pre-tournament, I got 7 of the 8 quarterfinals correct. I got 2 out of the 4 semifinalists. I got 1 of the 2 finalists. Mid-tournament, I got 2 out of the 3 quarterfinals correct. Most went 1 of 3 because most had Fritz and Sinner. I at least had Sinner and Musetti. And I got both of my semifinals correct before the semis, mid-tournament. And then I missed on the pre-final prediction. I didn't get the final correct. So there was a lot right there, and I just wanted to set the record straight. Olympics, 64-player draw, no buys. I love this format. I think it's a format that normally creates a really exciting tournament with a lot of highly intriguing matchups right away. Now, I will say, as I was going through this particular 64-player draw, it felt a little bit emptier than it should. It didn't feel as stacked, as compact with talent as sometimes a 64-player draw does and should, especially for a big tournament. And we'll get into the bigness of the Olympics in a moment. The reason why I think it felt a little bit emptier than usual is because, well, there are a lot of players missing. No Jannik Sinner, no Hubert Hurkacz, no Andrei Rublev, no Grigor Dimitrov, no Holger Rune, and that's not even a comprehensive list. Some of those players are injured. Some of them are just skipping out. And that's where you get a very interesting dynamic with the Olympics, where it's a crazy juxtaposition, but it's true. For some, the Olympics will be the highlight of the career. It will be line 1 on the resume or the CV. It will be the thing, the Olympics. For others, it's not even worth playing. Which is crazy, right? How could you have an event that for some is going to make their career and for others is not even worth the trip? But it's true. On one end, you have stories like Andy Murray, whose Olympic gold in 2012 was a real sign for things to come, winning the U.S. Open and Wimbledon thereafter, and then over the course of the next 4 majors. You have players like Monica Puig and Nicolas Massou, whose Olympic gold medals, Massou in 2004, Puig in 2016, are really the greatest things that they achieved. You have players like Novak Djokovic, who has built the greatest resume of all time, the greatest legacy of all time, but has wanted this badly, and you have been able to see how important it is in how he's taken his losses, and of course the fact that at this stage in his career, where he is playing a very, as light a schedule as possible, he continues to play the Olympics. Plus, he's been pretty open about how much it means. On the other end, on the downside of the whole Olympic debate, time is money on the tour, is what I would say. So when you are after Wimbledon, you are dedicating this period of time to go back to the clay and play the Olympics. Let's be honest, it is bad for your ranking. Notice a lot of players who are trying to get their ranking back up, like Denis Shapovalov or Matteo Berrettini, they are not playing the Olympics. They're focused on getting their ranking back up, so they're going to go play Washington, D.C. and start to, get back onto playing these ATP events. So it's bad for your ranking. It's bad for your wallet. It's arguably bad for the body. Not only does it take away some of the rest that you might want post-Wimbledon, but you're also going, changing surface over and over again here, which I think most would agree, most physiological experts would agree is bad for the body. So there are some real downsides to playing, and that's why for some it's not even worth it. How does all of this affect the tournament? Well, I think that motivation can be all over the map when it comes to Olympic tennis. And I think we've seen that over the years. And I think it has lent itself to more unpredictability at this tournament compared to some of your typical slams, especially, and big tournaments. And I was going through it, and the reality is the vast majority of the time, someone is going to win Olympic gold who has never won a major. That is the vast majority of the time. And I'm going to go through it with you. 2020, Zverev and Bencic. 2016, Monica Puig. 2012, Andy Murray at the time. At the time, he hadn't won a major. 2008, Elena Dementieva. 2004, Nicolas Massou. 2000 was the only exception in this recent era where Evgeny Kafelnikov and Venus Williams had both already won majors. 1996, Lindsay Davenport. That predated all of her majors, actually by quite a bit. 1992 was another double. Jennifer Capriati had never won a major. Marc Risset, the Swiss, never won a major. So it is, I would just flag that as a trend where I think it's a little more likely on the women's side. Maybe, I don't know. I think it's a little more likely on the women's side than the men's side. But it is likely that somebody takes home the gold who has no majors on their resume. And because of that, at the end of this preview, I do want to give a player outside of the top 10 who I think is most likely to win gold. Not something I usually do, but just a fun thing to try. All right. And now, without further ado, let's get to this quarter-by-quarter preview. Got to pull it up. Sorry for the delay. Was not prepared. Did not have my slides up. All right, here we go. Novak Djokovic is the number 1 seed. We start with his quarter. There are only 4 seeds in each quarter. In this case, top seeds are Djokovic, Tsitsipas, Baez, and Fils. My dark horse here is Rafael Nadal. My upset alert is Sebastian Baez. My early popcorn is Fils Arnaldi in the first round. Let's start with Rafa. And of course, with that is also the bomb, so to speak, of this draw reveal. Nadal, pretty good at Roland Garros, wouldn't you say? 97% win percentage for his career at Roland Garros. He had a good week in Bostad, in my opinion. Hadn't played in 50 days. Came back, made the final, beat Cam Norrie, beat Mariano Navone, Those are two good wins. If I were to offer a critique, it's the same critique that I had for him coming into Roland Garros. Particularly if you recall his match against, let's say, Zizou Bergs in Rome, the matches got too physical for Nadal. The matches were too tough, and he was not able to preserve his body. I don't think he played well in the final against Borges. Really happy for Nuno Borges, first career title, but I don't think he played well in that final at all. And I really think that physically he was feeling probably horrible based on the way he played. Now, Nadal, I favor him against Vucevic in the first round. Djokovic is an unbelievable favorite against Matthew Ebden, who on clay, I know this might sound harsh, but on clay, he was never very good on clay. He's like a serve and volleyer who really only plays doubles nowadays, doesn't play singles anymore. He's not a top 300 player in the world on clay, likely, Matt Ebden, which, I mean, I'm sure if he actually went back to playing singles, that would change. But right now, he's probably not even a top 300 level on clay. It is an absolute gimme for Novak Djokovic in the first round. Albeit maybe a little bit uncomfortable to face a serve and volleyer. I don't know. You don't see him that often anymore. So we're likely going to get a Djokovic-Nadal second round, which is exciting. And I think might be a really nice way to cap off their rivalry in a unique circumstance at Roland Garros, but at the Olympics. This is probably, I will say this is probably the best circumstance Nadal could possibly have to beat Djokovic right now. You go factor by factor by factor. This is the ideal circumstance for Rafa. It is, of course, court Philippe Chatrier, his best court in the world. It is best of three, which at this time I believe is good for Nadal. It helps preserve him physically. It is early rounds that also helps preserve Nadal physically. And it is the Olympics. It is the Olympics, which, to me, has been tough for Djokovic because he wants it a little bit too badly. Now, motivation in general, it's good. It is a good thing. You want it. But there's also a threshold that I think Djokovic has crossed from observing him play at the tail end of Olympics over the years. I feel that Novak has put a little bit too much pressure on himself, particularly in 2021. I think that's hurt his tennis. So I think to play Djokovic at the Olympics, you have a better chance of taking him out in this setting than you do at Roland Garros if you're Rafael Nadal. Or I think it's easier to take him out at the Olympics than if this were, let's say, the French Open a couple months ago. What kind of level do I expect out of Nadal? I look to, the Nadal Zverev first round of Roland Garros level. That was an extremely high level. Now, Rafa, his nerve management wasn't any good. It was bad in that match. Zverev was unbelievable. But for all of these reasons, given how Nadal played at Roland Garros, all of these circumstances, I take Rafa's chances of beating Novak very seriously. I really do. I take them very seriously. Still, I'm going with Djokovic, however. I don't fully trust Nadal physically. Even with the week to recover, I know there's some buzz. There have been some missed practices for Rafa in the lead up. Apparently, there's been a little bit of a thigh issue that he's experienced. In general, I don't trust Nadal physically. That's a big deal. I think Djokovic in big moments is playing with more bravery. As positive as I thought Nadal's level was against Zverev in sets 2 and 3 at Roland Garros, he did come out unbelievably nervous, landing the ball incredibly short. And I have seen, since Nadal has come back, haven't loved the nerve management. I am concerned about that. I also think Nadal's defense and his serve is a little bit vulnerable right now in general. So I think Djokovic is the better player at the moment. I do pick him, despite the extra pressure that comes with the Olympics for Djokovic. I think he's a little bit stronger physically, and I think mentally just playing braver tennis under pressure, which I think will go a long way in in this, post-prime Raffolé head-to-head. All right. I will not go as long on basically anything else, but I wanted to be thorough on that because, of course, it is a second-round match that I do believe is likely to happen, and obviously it's going to bring a whole lot of intrigue. Upset alert, as you may remember, is Sebastian Baez. Kind of a player who I thought he'd go deeper in Kitzbühel, and I was a little bit concerned about the big change in altitude, but he actually lost to Hugo Gaston. But he is somewhat prone to first-round losses before he gets kind of used to the conditions. His backhand can be a little bit unstable, and he's got a lefty opponent in Thiago Monteiro who's going to hit big forehands into Baez's backhand. Montero's been playing his best stuff recently. He's been playing good clay court tennis, particularly on the forehand. He recently had the win over Ruud in Bostad. So I think this is a tough first round for Baez. I think Monteiro has a chance. Popcorn matches Arnaldi versus Fils. Arthur Fils has found a streak of confidence. Won his first title at the ATP 500 in Hamburg. Beat Alexander Zverev. He plays with a ton of energy. And by the way, that's coming off a really good grass season for Fils. So it's not just one tournament. He plays with a ton of energy. The crowd is going to bring it. Arnaldi isn't one to back down, although he's in bad form. It's a 4-match losing streak. And I think in terms of entertainment value, these guys are great. They're light heavyweights, meaning they're not such massive hitters or such massive servers that they play a lot of short points. But they do bring a lot of pop in their ball striking, and they have great speed. So you get very explosive athletic points. I think this is going to be a great one to watch. Quarterfinal prediction is Novak Djokovic defeats Stefanos Tsitsipas. Let me start by saying Tsitsipas's draw is incredible. It is amazing. He's got Zizou Bergs, Dan Evans, and then in the third round, either Baez or maybe even Thiago Monteiro if the upset alert plays out. And then quarterfinal, you have Djokovic or Nadal, who have both shown vulnerabilities this year. Maybe if you throw Fils in there, possible quarterfinal opponent, that would be great for Tsitsipas. But I have Djokovic. They have played twice at Roland Garros, and it's gone 5 both times. But overall, big picture, Novak has won 10 straight. There is, I don't know, like part of me wants to actually put some faith in Tsitsipas in this spot. But I didn't love his tennis in Gstaad. And if you take out Monte Carlo this year, he is 2-6 against top 20 players. You might say, well, that's unfair. Why would you take out Monte Carlo? Well, if you've shown time and time again, because I don't normally like to do that, but if you show time and time again that you are a different animal at one event than you are the rest of the year, and Tsitsipas has shown he is a different animal at Monte Carlo, then I do think at other events it's fair to sometimes take that out of the sample and say, what do we have here? What are we looking at here? And Tsitsipas post-clay season, we're coming off of clay season, and his record against top 20 players stands at 2-6 if you take out Monte Carlo. That's concerning. And of course, with the 0-10 record against Djokovic, I question his belief. I question him going out there and feeling like he's going to win, and how might that seep into his ability to compete at his highest level, because I've seen it in the Alcaraz head-to-head, in my opinion. Not just that Tsitsipas has played really well, but Alcaraz has been too good and he's beaten him. I've seen Tsitsipas in the Alcaraz head-to-head just not play up to his standards over and over again, which I think has been mental. So I don't think Tsitsipas has a good chance to beat Djokovic. Djokovic, meanwhile, semifinal or better at 3 of his last 4 completed tournaments. So despite Novak having, and obviously, you can go back to the start of the year in January, the first big event of the year, Australian Open, that was another semifinal. So if you do look at the big picture for Djokovic, it has not been an inability to go deep at events. It has been a lack of finals, and of course it has been no big titles. That is why Djokovic has had a rough year, but he has shown the ability to make semis. The next quarter is the number 3 seed Alexander Zverev. It is Zverev, Fritz, Musetti, Jarry. If this feels familiar, That's because it is. This is incredibly similar to the Wimbledon quarter that Alexander Zverev had, where I was looking at the potential semifinalists and juggling who? Zverev, who I ended up picking, Fritz, Musetti. Those are the three players I was juggling in Zverev's quarter at Wimbledon. And here we are again with those guys as the top seeds. My dark horse here is a 4-way tie, but a slight edge to Navone. My upset alert is Nicolas Jarry, and my early popcorn is Musetti versus Monfils in the first round. There are a lot of high-quality unseeded players here, which is why it was difficult to decide. You have, in the top section of this quarter, you have a first-round match between Zheng Zhizhen and Tomas Mahach. Zheng looked fantastic in Hamburg. Clay is his best surface. I like him with a lot of time to really be able to lean on the ball and use his power. Mahach played awesome at Roland Garros this year. He beat Navone. He beat Nuno Borges. I like him in general as a dark horse. Speaking of Navone and Borges, those two are in the bottom section here. They're playing each other in a first-round matchup. The winner of Navone Borges gets the winner of Musetti Monfils. I believe Navone is a bad matchup for Musetti, and I'll explain why in a moment. But Borges, he's coming off the title in Bostad. He's in better form. So there's a lot going into this, especially because I think the bottom section has more opportunity because it's away from Zverev. There's a lot to weigh here when coming to, picking a dark horse. I think Navone, if you're going to ask me who's most likely to make the quarterfinal out of all of those guys, I think Navone, given the draw, matchups, the ability to put a lot of balls in play and play with a lot of heart. Slight lean to Navone there. Upset alert, Nicolas Jarry. Would have liked to have seen him play post-Wimbledon because it would have signified that he's healthy again. Obviously, the fact that he didn't play post-Wimbledon Clay tells me maybe he's still not feeling well, tells me he's still not healthy. He's been dealing with an infection, I think a sinus issue, if I'm remembering correctly. And, he didn't play before Wimbledon, and now he's not playing after Wimbledon, so the signs aren't good. He hasn't won since the French Open. He plays Popyrin in the first round, who just had a bad title defense in Umag, unfortunately for him. But I do like Popyrin in general on clay. I think he can beat Jarry. My popcorn match, Musetti versus Monfils, is also somewhat of an upset alert, in my opinion. It's funny because over the years watching Gael Monfils play at Roland Garros, I have constantly thought to myself, if only RG were best of three. If it were, Monfils would have a better chance. Because for many years, particularly in Monfils' athletic prime, I just thought, he doesn't really have the gas tank for this. For his tennis on clay, he really struggled to create offense on clay. For his defensive tennis on clay, he was just letting opponents run him too much, and eventually he'd hit empty against the very best in the world. He's had some good wins at Roland Garros, but I've always thought that best of three would help him, and now he kind of gets it. Obviously, this is a post-athletic prime Monfils, but I think he's dangerous in this format. And on clay, you need to force Lorenzo to create for himself. That's the key when you're playing Musetti on clay. Make him create for himself. Gael loves doing that. So I'm very intrigued to see how Musetti will come on here after the really positive grass court season. I'm looking forward, of course, to watching Gael use the crowd. And to me, this is a can't-miss first-round match. I know Monfils ends up being in a lot of popcorn matches, especially in recent years because he's been unseeded so often, and he does bring more intrigue than most of the unseeded players, generally speaking. But I think this is going to be competitive as well. So it's a double whammy for early popcorn. My quarterfinal prediction here is Zverev defeats Fritz. This is quite different than what I had or what ended up playing out over the course of Wimbledon. And you guys know that I boldly picked Musetti to make the Wimbledon quarterfinal. I then boldly picked him to beat Fritz once the final 8 was set, but I actually don't see it again, which might be surprising given the common, I guess, accepted line of thinking is that Musetti is better on clay and best on clay. But I see some differences in how this might play out. First of all, the psychology is completely different. If Fritz and Musetti rematch, no longer is the psychology and the pressure so heavily concentrated on Fritz. I also don't see the slice being as much of an issue. I think that Fritz against Musetti for a second time could actually do a lot more running around and hitting forehands off of Musetti's slice, and I think that could be a much kind of easier solution instead of trying to deal with it on the backhand, especially when it's short in the court. Still might be an issue, but I don't think as big of an issue on the grass, which really increases slice effectiveness. I also think that Zverev beats Fritz this time, which is a reversal of a Wimbledon result. Now, this is a well-established, tough matchup for Sasha, but I think Zverev's movement advantage usually surfaces on the clay, and it gives him the edge, like it did in Rome this year. Also, it really did seem that Zverev would have won that match at Wimbledon had he not been injured. So, despite the fact that, if you look at the track record, Fritz actually has gotten the better of Zverev often, like on a regular basis. And even when Zverev has won, it's been close. I think Olympics best of 3, Roland Garros, to me, that feels like a Zverev spot in this head-to-head. So I pick Zverev through to the semis. Let us now go to Daniil Medvedev's quarter. He is the number 4 seed with Casper Ruud opposite, Hugo Humbert, and Felix Auger-Aliassime. My dark horse here is Francisco Cerundolo. Upset alert is Hugo Humbert. Early popcorn, I had to leave that blank. Making the dark horse Cerundolo, somewhat of a slam dunk, somewhat of a no-brainer. Couldn't be more obvious, to be completely honest. His best level on clay is a borderline top 10 level. I've been saying that for a couple years now. Now, this year, he hasn't been a great competitor mentally. There have been a lot of tough losses. Grass court season was tough. Lost from 2 sets to love up at Wimbledon. Lost in the first round, defending his title in Eastbourne. So I really did want to see him get some wins post-Wimbledon. And he's done that. Hamburg got some wins. Kitzbühel got some wins. I think he's still alive in Kitzbühel. That goes a long way, in my opinion. He needed to build up some confidence after a real gut-punching grass court season. His draw is also really promising for these Olympic Games. Tomas Barrios Vera in the first round, the winner of Hugo Humbert and Fabian Marozsan in the second round. If he beats Ruud in the third round with some momentum, to me, that's like a 60-40 Ruud match. So a legitimate chance for Cerundolo to win that match and really be in business in a quarter where I think Cerundolo at his best on clay might even be the favorite against Daniil Medvedev. So this is a really serious dark horse, in my opinion. Upset alert, Felix Auger-Aliassime. Look, his draw is actually favorable. It is. But I have to make him upset alert because his level, to me, on clay is unworthy of a seed. I don't think Auger-Aliassime, in earnest, is a top 16 player in this draw. And I even think, in general, his ranking, 19 in the world, is at the moment a misleading ranking. I hate to say it, but he is 4-10 against top 50 players this year. One of those 4 wins is a retirement. One of those 4 wins is Mannarino on clay. One of those 4 wins is Shelton on clay. His win over Casper Ruud in Madrid is his only good win of the year. That's the truth of it. So he's 19 in the world. I don't think that's a real accurate representation of his level. I do think that he can lose early, even though the draw is favorable. Quarterfinal prediction. It is Casper Ruud defeating Daniil Medvedev. I don't think Medvedev is going to be super motivated here. He has said that he likes the Olympics. He's coming for the experience. He enjoyed it in Tokyo. He thinks he's going to enjoy it even more in Paris with all the COVID restrictions lifted. But I think there's a difference between someone who is going to savor it and enjoy it and someone like, look at Novak Djokovic and Iga Swiatek. Neither of them even staying in the Olympic Village because they don't want any distractions and they want that tunnel vision focused on trying to perform at their best. I don't think that's going to be Medvedev's mindset coming in. Of course, the North American hardcourt swing has been one of the most enjoyable parts of the season for Medvedev, and I think that will be in the back of his mind, and I feel that there has probably been a semblance of post-Wimbledon rest as opposed to training hard and getting ready for these Olympics. So I don't take Medvedev's medal chances in the singles very seriously, but his draw is irresistible. Like, I'd love, I'd almost like to pick him to get upset, but he's got Rinky Hijikata first round, Sebastian Offner second round. Now, Offner might be someone who has a chance. I just haven't gotten to the point with Offner where I feel really confident in him getting big wins. Maybe I'll get there with him. He does have a really big game. And then third round, you're looking at FAA or Marcos Giron maybe, or Dusan Lajovic. I got to pick Medvedev to the quarters. There's just nobody there who I can pick against Medvedev. But Casper Ruud on the other side, he's been exceptionally consistent at Roland Garros. Now, semifinals or better, 3 straight years at Roland Garros. He's going to be fresh. He's going to be motivated. I'm not panicked about the Bostad loss, although I do think it's kind of crazy how often he loses to lefties, like lower-ranked lefties. Luckily for him, I'm not sure he has to contend with that this tournament. Look, Ruud feels like a really easy pick out of this quarter. Really easy. You never know. But I pick him without much hesitancy. Oh, I didn't do my upset alert, did I? With I put Hugo Humbert. I'm sorry. I put Hugo Humbert as the upset alert on the slide, but I meant to put Felix Auger-Aliassime. So I'm sorry about that. Yeah. The real upset alert there is FAA. It's not Humbert. All right, 2 seed. Last quarter is Carlos Alcaraz's quarter. We've got Alcaraz, De Minaur, Tommy Paul, Alejandro Tabilo. My dark horse here is Jakub Mensik. My upset alert is Alex De Minaur. My early popcorn match is Paul versus Darderi in the first round. Mensik at upset alert. He is currently having a massive run in Umag. Not only is he through to the semis, he has crushed everybody, which that's what I like to see. Obviously, there's some concern when you go deep in 1 week in terms of how you're going to carry on arriving at the next event the following week. But if you're going to do it, it helps to just destroy everybody, huh? And that's what he's doing in Umag. We'll see what the semis look like today, what the final looks like if he wins the semis. Now, Mensik, it's interesting because he's been significantly worse on clay in his career compared to hardcourt, but I think it's just starting to click. And despite the fact that I prefer Mensik on a hardcourt at this stage, he's still the most dangerous unseeded player. And I know that the hype for Jakub Mensik, it's not all that high right now. It will be. It will be. I think people just haven't caught up to it. He is one of my favorite prospects, if not my favorite prospect right now in all of tennis. And I think it's only a matter of time. I think in the next 12 months or so, there will be that realization, I think, from the masses that Mensik is going to be a top player in the future. Upset alert, Alex De Minaur. He got hurt at Wimbledon. It was obviously pretty bad because he would have played that quarterfinal against Djokovic. I mean, if there was a minute chance that he could have played, he would have been out there. Clay, of course, is also the surface where he's least natural. He had a big clay court season, but it's a little bit tougher for him. So coming off of injury, coming onto his least favorite surface, playing Jan-Lennard Struff in the first round. Those are all of the ingredients that led me to picking De Minaur for upset alert. Struff against top players, He can play up to that level. Like, even if de Minaur shows up and plays well, Struff can actually match him. Jan Lennard, 5-4 this year against top 20 players on clay. A winning record in 9 matches against top 20 players on clay. Popcorn match, Tommy Paul, Luciano Darderi. This is, I'll admit, this is not really a can't-miss match. This isn't a, you better get in front of your television set for this match. I get that. De Minaur Struff is probably better, but we already discussed de Minaur Struff. I wanted to pick a different match, and I think this is going to be a very competitive match. Paul has not played since Wimbledon. His opponent, Luciano Darderi, is battle-hardened with clay court wins, tour level, back-to-back weeks. Overall, Darderi on clay this year, 19-9. That is 1 fewer win than Zverev, 2 fewer than Ruud. Now, he plays the Golden Swing, plays a lot more tournaments. You get all that. But to me, that's nothing to fully discount, that he is a very battle-hardened, match-tough clay court competitor who's going to make things tough on Tommy Paul and demand a really high level from a guy who's coming back, first match on clay. I'm always a little bit skeptical of the Americans in this spot, especially in this circumstance. Like, it's one thing if you're looking at the 2012 Olympics where, you know, you just stay in London a bit longer and you stay on the same surface. But I think for the Americans, with the North American hard court swing, most important part of the season, just ahead, having obviously wanting to go home after Wimbledon for the first time in a while, I think it's a tough ask for the Americans at this event. You have circumstances like this all the time for players from other parts of the country, for other parts of the world, rather. But I think particularly tough circumstances for Americans at this Olympics, including the fact that just in general, clay is not as favorable for them as grass and hard court. More broadly, quarterfinal prediction here is Carlos Alcaraz defeats Tommy Paul. So, yes, I wasn't able to really fully pick against Tommy. I thought about just putting Jakub Mensik into the quarterfinal, but I couldn't quite go that far. I mean, the track record really isn't there. He's having his first big run on clay. Am I really going to say he's going to do it again the very next week at his first Olympics? Couldn't quite get there. So I'm going with Tommy Paul, who I do really like on clay. Alcaraz has a terrific draw, however. I actually see Tabilo as Alcaraz's biggest threat. Big weapons. They've played twice, but they haven't really played since Alejandro Tabilo has improved his game and become a top 30 level player in general. I think probably a top 20 level player on clay. So I think Tabilo is uncomfortable if Alcaraz isn't at his best. Now, the Tommy Paul head-to-head, that's also been a competitive one against Alcaraz. But you look at the way Tommy has had success against Alcaraz. It's been all about rushing Carlos, taking the ball early and coming forward. And that's so much harder to do on clay. You're going to have to be more selective about your net rushing. The approach shots aren't as damaging. And I think the clay really helps Alcaraz if you look at the way their matches have gone. Because what Tommy has been doing against Alcaraz, it's not going to work on clay. Alcaraz through the semis. Let's go to the final weekend. I will say before I do the reveal, it is interesting because I kind of started with this big thing about how the Olympics can be a little bit unpredictable. I have picked favorites here out of these quarters. But the way I would kind of defend the logic there, if you look at the quarters, first of all, there is a clear-cut favorite, all 4 quarters. And I think given the softening of this draw, you look at some of the potential disruptors, of course, Jannik Sinner being out, but even a guy like Grigor Dimitrov, who's been a real contender. Hurkacz has been a real contender. Rublev hasn't been a contender recently, but in general, he's someone who is likely to kind of be in the mix quarterfinals and has wins, particularly in best of 3 against top players. You take these guys out, and I'm just seeing more straightforward, easier than usual paths for the top contenders from a draw standpoint. So I think there's going to be a lot of people who agree with me. I think there's going to be a lot of people who have the same exact semifinal as me, because there aren't a lot of tough calls to be made. And likely something surprising is going to happen, but that's the reality of this draw. It's evenly split, and I think you have kind of some clear favorites in each quarter. Final weekend reveal, 3, 2, 1. Gold medal to Carlos Alcaraz. Silver medal to Alexander Zverev. Bronze to Casper Ruud. Let's start here. And obviously, just to kind of explain, Alcaraz versus Ruud would be one semifinal, won by Alcaraz. Zverev versus Djokovic would be the other semifinal. I have it won by Zverev. Alcaraz-Zverev would be the gold medal match, which would be a repeat, of course, of the Roland Garros final. Alcaraz winning that match, Zverev runner-up, getting the silver medal, and then I have Casper Ruud taking the bronze against Novak Djokovic, which, I don't know. I didn't put much thought into that prediction. Historically speaking, Djokovic hates bronze medal matches. So I'll get this out of the way right now. He hates them. He has not played well in them. He's won once, which was in 2008. After that, he's lost all of his bronze medal matches, and he's played a few. So, look, I don't know. I mean, I went with that trend. It is difficult, I think, for everybody. Tennis players are not used to having to play again after losing. It's difficult for everybody. But I think it comes down a lot to how badly do you want it. But also, Casper Ruud against Novak Djokovic on clay, in general, I really take Ruud's chances seriously in that head-to-head just based on the level that they've brought to the table. So, bronze stuff aside and the motivation, throw that aside, I think Ruud has a chance against Djokovic on clay, period. And I think Zverev's level on clay has been consistently better than the level that Djokovic has shown on clay this year. Which, by the way, like if you look at the way Djokovic played at Wimbledon, and let's actually do it this way. Look at the field against Carlos Alcaraz. And I'll address Djokovic as a gold medal contender as I go down the list here. So, obviously, there's no Jannik Sinner. Djokovic, at no point this year, has looked good enough to beat elite opposition. Like, at no point has he shown that. You might believe that it's coming, but at no point has he shown that, which matters, I think, a lot at this point in the year. You think, how much can really change in 2 weeks after Wimbledon? How drastically could that change? Especially because the surface makes it harder for him to be attacking. What we saw at Wimbledon was a brilliant display of skill, brilliant display of menacing offensive tennis, which worked really well against a lot of opponents. And then against Alcaraz, it wasn't enough. He needed to be more well-rounded in his tennis. Well, on clay, it forces Djokovic to actually go more away from the tennis that was working for him at Wimbledon and lean more into the physical style that's going to put more stress on his movement and his athleticism, which have just looked diminished so far. So, and then you have the mental thing, which I talked about earlier in the preview, where wanting it too badly is not good. And I think there's a lot of pressure for Djokovic. And mentally, I think it's a difficult spot for him. So that's Djokovic. Casper Ruud, 0-4 against Alcaraz. I just don't think his backhand is really strong enough to beat Carlitos. Medvedev, on hard court. On hard court, if Alcaraz doesn't play his best, then Medvedev's a massive threat to just take him out. And I think that's a fair statement right there. Off of hard court, I'm just not convinced Medvedev threatens him. That includes grass, that includes clay. I don't think Medvedev threatens Alcaraz off of hard court. Needs to be hard court. So that's how I get to Alcaraz getting into the gold medal match. Now, I will say, and Zverev getting into the gold medal match, because it kind of explains why I favor him against Djokovic. Now, Zverev, to me, is the most serious of the contenders against Alcaraz. But of course, Carlitos just beat him on this court and is actually playing a lot better now. I think Alcaraz is sharper now after Wimbledon than he was at that point. There are some arguments for Zverev. Psychologically, I think this is easier for Zverev. It's not a slam. He's already won the Olympics. He'd be kind of going for somewhat of an Andy Murray dynamic, Zverev, where he could say, yeah, this and that about the majors, but at the Olympics, I was actually the best in my era, which would be a feather in Zverev's cap, no doubt about it. Alcaraz will not have Juan Carlos Ferrero. JCF, on-court coaching is not legal. JCF is on vacation. I mean, I guess those two things might be related. Zverev has more Olympic experience than Alcaraz. There are a lot of distractions when it comes to the Olympics. I don't know. I mean, could that take away from Alcaraz? I don't think so, but it's theory. So those would be the arguments for Zverev, but ultimately, I'm not picking someone other than Alcaraz right now. After winning the Channel Double, feeling strongly that his best tennis on clay is superior to everybody else in this field, I am not going to pick against Alcaraz. I think he might continue to ride this wave and win the Olympic gold. Hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you next time.